I'm thinking that was a good conversation because, like, girl, there's nothing wrong. That mom was like, no, something has to be wrong. That like, there's something, And I just remember being like, girl, what is it? Because the patient, like your true patient, is this like 14-year-old
Right.
who's pretty much like, cool, and the mom is like, mm-mm. And so once we actually like separated them and talked to them, that mom wanted that her daughter to have a regular period because she wanted to be sure that she wasn't pregnant each month. That's what that mom said. I said, okay. That daughter could not care less, okay? She played
Right.
basketball. She just needed to know when her period was starting. Like, she cared about when her period was starting because their away uniform was white. And so she needed to know what to pack in her bag. And I was so impressed by how disconnected their desires were.
What's up, Doc? Welcome to the Docs Get Money podcast. Are you a badass doctor killing it professionally and has bigger dreams than just clocking in and out of the hospital? Do you want to leave behind a legacy that is as lit as an HBCU homecoming? Want to know how other doctors are getting to the big bag? That's right, making 5, 6, and 7 figures without putting on the white coat? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Kimberly, but you can call me Kim or KB. I went from being a burnt out and overwhelmed emergency physician to the founder and CEO of 2 6-figure non-clinical companies and beating burnout along the way. I'm also your business coach, here to help you make money moves to change the world. This podcast isn't just about making money, though. It's about leveling up your life, mindset, and bank account so you can build an empire that's as iconic as Beyonce. You ready? Let's get into it. Picture this. You're sprinting out of a building engulfed in flames. The very structure you once revered as a temple of healing now is nothing but a towering inferno of burnout and frustration. Behind you, the endless nights, the thankless shifts, and the corporate medicine structure controlling how you practice are all consumed by the blaze. Up ahead, you see nothing but freedom, clarity, purpose, income, and impact. That's where I come in. And from side hustler to CEO, my signature one-on-one business coaching program, you'll start your own fire by launching your first profitable coaching, consulting, or midterm rental business and make clinical cash in 90 days or less. That's right, 4 or 5 figures in 90 days or less. This is for the doctors who feel like every shift is a dumpster fire, unmanageable, or just out of control. Let me help you rise from the ashes, thriving, and with a business that brings you life instead of sucking it out of you. Ready? Slide into my DMs on Instagram at Dr. Kimberly B with the word out, and let's turn the burnout into the bag. What's up, Doc? Welcome to another episode of the Docs Get Money podcast. Today is an interview episode, and I am so excited. This has been on my calendar for the longest time, even I think kind of before I started the podcast. This person has been on my list of people to talk to because she is an absolute powerhouse. I'm so glad to say that I know her as a fellow physician. I am a loyal social media follower of hers, and she just so happens to be my client as well too. I have sitting with me here Dr. Charis Chambers, otherwise known as the period doctor on Instagram. Dr. Charis has been a absolute joy to work with and someone that has created a lot of success in a very short period of time. If you don't know her, I strongly suggest that you go ahead and open up your Instagram app and go check out her page. She is at the forefront of not only women's health, but adolescent health and talking to young women and girls about their bodies and educating them. And so we'll get into more about her story in just a few minutes. But other than that, you may already know her because you're already following her. She has grown her own professional and personal brand on Instagram to over 200,000 followers. And she has been able to turn that into her own coaching business where she helps other physicians, health professionals to grow their professional brands on social media as well too, in order for them to gain influence and basically not even gain influence, translate the influence that they already have offline to online spaces and potentially monetize that as well too. So I'm giving away a lot about Charis. Like I said, I'm fangirling over her. I'm so glad to call her a sorority sister, a client, a friend, all of those wonderful things. But just in case you don't know about Charis, let me read your bio. Her bio. Dr. Charis Chambers is a board certified OBGYN and specialty certified pediatric adolescent gynecologist. She graduated magna cum laude from Spelman College in 2010 with a degree in biology. She completed medical school at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, where she recently received the 2024 Distinguished Young Alumni Award. Okay, I've got connections to the UAB. I'm an HBCU grad, so I'm already all over that already. She completed her OBGYN residency at Greenville Memorial Hospital, where she was inducted into the prestigious Medical Society of Alpha Omega Alpha. She did her fellowship training in pediatric and adolescent gynecology at Baylor College of Medicine, graduating and beginning work as a practicing physician in 2020. She launched her social media platform, The Period Doctor, in summer of 2019 after recognizing an unmet need for medically accurate reproductive health information and minority physician representation in social media outlets. Since then, she has been featured on national television, in digital media, and in print publications as a medical expert. Her platform now yields millions of views per month with over 265,000 followers. Like I said, you probably are already following her. If you're like one of the cool kids on Instagram, you already know who the Period Doctor is. You already know Dr. Chambers. She has been honored for her social media impact with the 2024 Women's Health Educator Blossom Award at the White Dress Project's 10th Annual Empowerment Gala and the Rising Star Award at the Atlanta Business Chronicle's 2025 Healthcare Champions Awards. She was also recently recognized for her work by the Georgia State House of Representatives with commemorative resolution. Incredible. She serves her community as a member of the Movement Charter Schools Atlanta campus governing board and the medical review committee of the board of directors for Period. She has recently taken on the new title of mom to her 4-month-old son, Joshua, who is so cute and so juicy, who she plans to teach all about menstrual health and equity. Her future aspirations include authorship and continued education and advocacy in the reproductive justice space. Like I said, Dr. Charis Chambers is an incredible powerhouse. I'm so glad that she is blessing us today with her presence on the Docs Get Money podcast. And so, Dr. Chambers, what's up, girl? How are you?
Hey girl, I'm amazing. Oh gosh, it's so crazy to hear you like talk about me. I'm like, oh wow, that sounds pretty impressive.
She sounds cool. Like, wow, that's a lot of
That's a
things.
good exercise. Like, have a good friend read your bio, like to you to like amp you up for the day. No, that was awesome. Thank you for having me, Kimberly. I'm excited to be
Absolutely.
here.
I'm excited to have you. So tell me, take us all the way back to you being little Charis. Like, what even made you want to be a doctor and what got you
Oh
interested
wow.
into OBGYN?
I think, I've mentioned this to you in passing, but I came from a pretty large family. So I was the third of four kids in our home. And I love being in a big family, but when you are with siblings, especially, siblings that are close to your age, you start to realize you got to fight a little bit to survive. You got to kind of stand 10 toes down on some stuff, especially as on the younger end of things. And so I think at a very young age, I was aware of power dynamics. I was
Mhm.
aware of the importance of standing up. I was aware of justice. I would write down things like keeping track of when my brother got to go to the movies alone. I was like, age 14, that's when I get to go. And then when I turned 14, I showed my parents, I was like, I wrote it down in my diary. And they're like, we don't care nothing about that. Okay. Well, this is not a democracy. You're a girl, things are different, And so I had a general curiosity about the world around me
Mhm.
and wanted to desperately make sure that everyone felt valued and heard and that there was some justice around me. So that was kind of just the little thing within me since I was a kid. I think over time I really love science. I love
Mhm.
math. And I began to see how my father, who is an OBGYN in our community,
Ah,
navigated the world. And it didn't matter if we were at church, a library, Walmart, like he was Dr. Chambers, and
yeah.
people would stop him and speak about how he had impacted their life, be it delivering the kid who was, running around with a ton of energy, or, removing fibroids, or whatever, caring for their mom, whatever it was. He was such an integral part of our community. And I knew him as my dad, but the community knew him as someone who took care of them. And,
Yeah.
just seeing that, it was admirable. And I definitely saw how committed my dad was to his work. But it wasn't until I was actually at Spelman
Hmm.
in college where I decided I actually wanted to be a physician. I didn't really love math as much as I thought I did. I was like, I'll be a math professor. And then you start to get the hard math, and you're like, I hate math.
No.
And I started really leaning into what it meant to be like a servant leader, and what
Hmm.
that means to want to, be a change agent in the world, and what that looks like. And I just wanted to make a change for women and
Yeah.
children. I felt like that was the place where I wanted to lend my voice and expertise. And I wanted to have a job that was fulfilling, and really meant something. So that's the long way to say how I ended up being a physician.
I love that. No, I absolutely love that. And so your parents, typical black parents, we don't care what you wrote down in your diary, however long ago.
I
You gonna
said,
go to the
wait.
movies when we say you can go to the
Right. I
movies.
remember being like, see, this world is something to it.
It's not just here. No, it's not just.
Yes.
I absolutely love that. So when you decided at Spelman, that's of course when you decided to apply to medical school,
Mhm.
and then you went to UAB. Did your dad also go to UAB as well too?
No. So my dad actually went to Meharry, which is like a
Okay.
really important part of just my life, the role of HBCUs in my family, and just how it
Hmm.
has impacted our ability to just live and come into our own, and really, I guess, achieve what we've wanted
Yeah.
to achieve. And so that definitely has been a big influence in my life. My dad went to Morehouse, and then he went to Meharry. My brother went to
Nice.
Morehouse. Me and all my sisters went to Spelman. My mom went to Emory, and she was the biggest proponent for us going to an HBCU, because her experience at Emory was so different from her sister's experience, my aunt. When my aunt was at Spelman, they were only 2 years apart, so they were in
Hmm.
school at the same time in the same city, but having very different experiences. My mom wanted to be an attorney, and her advisors were like, "You can't do that." My aunt, had the nurturing and love of an
Right.
HBCU campus, and my mom just felt that. And so, for her girls, she was like, and for my brother, she was like, "No, y'all need to go there." So
Yeah.
that was a big deal. But no, my dad didn't go to UAB.
Got you. No, no, no. So I was gonna say my in residency, my program director went to UAB, and so our program for emergency medicine was modeled off of UAB. But I've heard, and even now living in the South, it's just like UAB is still just such a powerhouse in
It
the
is.
region for so many different things, and then just a center of excellence. And I think they train amazing physicians regardless. So,
No, like,
yeah,
I didn't even
that's why I
realize
was
that.
asking.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, just because, for what it's worth, when you hear about Alabama, it's not always good things, right? We tend to
No.
be like 49th. There's a saying like, thank God for Mississippi, which is so messed up because, so we're not often at the top of things, but UAB is an exception to that, as an
Hmm.
exceptional med school. And so when I wanted to go to med school, I actually did not want to go to UAB, because I didn't want to go back to Alabama necessarily. I was at
Hmm.
Spelman. I was like, I don't want to go back. But my dad actually set me down. He's like, this is an incredible school. And I had a good scholarship.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up going. And I'm glad I went. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to echo as far as HBCUs is concerned. Of course, I didn't go to Spelman. I applied and I got in, but I decided not to go because of the money whole thing.
Mhm.
But Fisk University and
Yes.
HBCUs, like you said, are the number one place where black doctors, where black attorneys, where black
Absolutely.
accountants, all of black excellence really comes some way, shape, form, or fashion for HBCUs. And I'm so glad that my mom, even though she didn't go to an HBCU as well, she pushed me to apply to an HBCU because she
Yes.
wanted me to have that same loving, supportive experience of
Yes.
doing that. So
Ugh.
I'm very grateful for my HBCU experience. And then my partner, my fiance, he went to FAMU. So he's
Oh,
also had
wow.
that
My
as well
husband went to
too.
Hampton.
No okay.
Yes,
And
the HBCUs
my
all
cousin went to Hampton too.
yes,
So it's just like
yes,
all HBCU love all over. But it's something about going to an HBCU that's just an indescribable experience. And no matter what HBCU you went to, we
mhm,
all share like a common bond. It's like, okay, you went to Spelman, I
absolutely.
went to Fisk. It doesn't matter. Like if we're all out in public or if I see your application, I'm like, oh nope, I got her. Like I'm gonna take care of her or all of those things. And I just love that camaraderie about
Yeah.
that. So, okay. Let me see, where are we now? So we got you in med school and then but you had decided when you got to medical school, that's my question, that you wanted to be an OBGYN, or you just was like, okay, I'm just going to be a physician, or how did you walk into medical school? Like, did
Yeah.
you know for sure you were going to be an OB?
I don't think I knew in that moment that I wanted to be an OBGYN. I think it's a natural pull as a
Mm-hmm.
woman, or even as a black woman, there is a kind of a lean, or a lot of black women tend to
Yeah.
see, themselves in the field of OBGYN. I think I considered it in in college, but once I got to med school and actually rotated through everything, that was when I decided. And I really thought I would do something different because, as I mentioned, my dad's an OBGYN, but so is my brother. And so I was like, this is getting
Oh.
redundant. Like, this is getting a little bit silly, right? So I was like thinking I would do something like surgery, something procedural, maybe emergency medicine, maybe anesthesia, something, where I felt like I was doing something. I didn't necessarily enjoy the medicine rotations
Mm-hmm.
as much. And so, yeah, that's what I thought. And then I did my first delivery. And I was like, oh no, I love this. I love this. I love talking to the patients. And I think I actually forgot to tell my dad as I was creating my fourth year schedule with my electives and things.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling my dad about it. He's like, that's a lot of kind of obstetric and, gynecologic things. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do OB. He was like, what? Like,
When were you
I
going to
know,
tell me this?
I forgot to tell him. I have no idea why.
I love it. So tell me about your first delivery, though. Is that when you said that that's the big moment that is just like, okay, this is what it's meant for me?
Yes, the first delivery, it's interesting because my third year I actually went to the Huntsville campus. So UAB has a lot of branch campuses to try to promote community medicine and make sure that we are, as a state in Alabama, that they're, training doctors that actually serve the state, right? And so my third year, I was assigned to the Huntsville campus, and it wasn't a high volume obstetrics hospital, so I
Mm-hmm.
just had to stalk. When I tell you I was walking through those halls, like, you about to deliver? No, okay, you need anything? You need some ice? Okay, gotcha. Hi, how are you doing? I mean, literally stalking, trying to get a delivery, and then somebody started pushing. And when I tell you, I felt like I had hit the lottery. Oh my gosh. And so I'm just off to the side. Nobody's letting me touch anything. I'm literally
Right.
just
You
there, right?
cannot
So
touch a thing.
don't
You
touch
can.
anything, don't mess up anything, you gotta watch. And I just remember the craziness of this room, the
Mm-hmm.
excitement, the joy. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, obstetrics is one of those rare situations where you are in that good hospital and you've got a good team, but you're there for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like you intended to come here, there's joy on the other side, or hope of significant joy. And just being in the hospital with that type of vibe and energy was
Yeah.
so different from every other rotation. Everybody else trying to get out.
Exactly.
They don't want to be there. This was not a part of their plan. And so obstetrics was just that really interesting side of things. Even so, during that delivery, there was a very short shoulder dystocia. And so
Mm.
it went very quickly from joy, joy, joy to emergency, and people jumped into action to joy again. And I was like, this is nuts. Like, and so just the excitement, you're doing something, it can be very joyful, but you still got to be on your P's and Q's. You have to be
Right.
ready. I said, this is the excitement and just energy and the, sitting right there witnessing a miracle type thing that I want
Yeah.
to do. And I literally could not, after that moment, understand how people did not like obstetrics and gynecology. People had strong feelings. They're like, oh, I hate that rotation. Da, da, da. It's like somebody be like, oh, I hate ice cream. It's like, what do you mean? Like,
Who hates ice
what are you
cream?
talking about? Do you realize that you are aberrant? That's how I felt. And so I was really, really sold at that point.
No, I recognize that moment, and that's really cool because it reminds me of the emergency room in a way. It's like,
Yes.
except for the fact that you're not supposed to be there, that's usually the worst day of your life if
Yeah.
you end up in the ER. But that's a really good way to think about it, as far as you're there for a joyful occasion. You are there
Right.
usually to bring a new life into the world, and you're expecting something positive to come out on the end. But I do understand the chaos of the room, especially if there is a dystocia, or if there's a breach that's unexpected and the little
Yeah.
foot is hanging out
That
instead of the
chaos
head.
gets.
Yeah. But there is something so special, and I tell everybody this, even though, of course, I'm an emergency physician. There is something so special about being the first one to touch another human being as they are coming into this world.
I mean, it's insane. And you really don't take it for granted. Obviously, I delivered hundreds and hundreds of babies, but it's just like, this is a new life that no one has ever seen with their eyes before. And I'm the
Yeah.
first one to see it. Like, what
Yeah.
is that? I mean, it
Yeah.
really is such a privilege. Such a
It
privilege.
is. It's
Yeah.
so cool. So, what made you then, after going into OBGYN residency, what made you subspecialize in adolescent and pediatric gynecology? How did you get
Yeah.
there?
So, my first exposure to peds and adolescent gynecology was actually as a medical student. So, in my fourth year, we had to do different electives or selective rotations. And so, you had to do an outpatient one. And so,
Okay.
I chose adolescent medicine. And so I really liked it, but then once I got there, I was like, oh wait, I forgot y'all have boys here. Like, because it wasn't truly adolescent gyne, like the actual course. So I told them, I was like, hey, I'm matching an OBGYN. Is there any like more focused way that I could focus more on our female patients? I'm sitting over here, why am I doing this testicular exam over here? This is not my future. Like, please, God, no. And so they said, actually, there is an OBGYN named Dr. Kimberly Hoover who does a half clinic once a week or every other week called pediatric and adolescent gynecology. And I was like, come again? I mean, when I tell you I had never heard of it, I was like, sign me up, please. And so they reached out
Yeah.
to her and she let me shadow her. And I think I only made it over there once or twice because of the infrequency of the clinic. And it was only like a 4-week rotation. And when I tell you, it was one of the most remarkable things, I will never forget it. The one patient we were seeing, it was a follow-up, and this patient had irregular periods, and Dr. Hoover had already done the full kind of lab workup, and ultimately she was telling them there's nothing wrong in the sense of like, there is no diagnosis that we know of from a hormonal standpoint
Okay.
that this might just be your periods. You just have irregularity right now that may correct itself, or,
Later on.
or maybe the duration of your period is just a little erratic that we just haven't quite nailed down what that pattern is. So it might be, a little longer. Da, da, da. But ultimately, there was no clear diagnosis for what was going on. It wasn't like she had PCOS or anything crazy, scary. Medicine's limited, but from our limitations, that's all we got. And I'm thinking that was a good conversation because, like, girl, there's nothing wrong. That mom was like, no, something has to be wrong. That like there's something. And I just remember being like, girl, what is it? Because the patient, like your true patient, is this like 14-year-old
Right.
who's pretty much like cool, and the mom is like, mm mm. And so once we actually like separated them and talked to them, that mom wanted that her daughter to have a regular period because she wanted to be sure that she wasn't pregnant each month. That's what that mom said. I
Uh-huh.
said, okay. That daughter could not care less, okay? She played
Right.
basketball. She just needed to know when her period was starting. Like, she cared about when her period was starting because their away uniform was white. And so she needed to
Ah.
know what to pack in her bag. And I was so impressed by how disconnected their desires were. And I was like, wow, this is such a remarkable moment because as a physician, you can connect that. Like, you can
Yeah.
talk to them and be like, everybody in this room wants to be healthy. The mom just has a fear of this, sexuality and this hypersexuality that we place on our daughters and our kids,
We do.
oftentimes in an effort to protect them, but more often causing more harm than good. So once you really got down to it, that little girl, first of all, her daughter dated other girls. Okay. So she was
So that wasn't even a problem
yeah,
in
so
the first
see, if
place.
you had a little curiosity, you would know she's safe. Okay. Matter of fact, she's not a risk. So it was so remarkable because you got to see this intergenerational disconnect of goals and all of the ways in which society and personal experiences and personal desires impact what health looks like to us. And as a physician, you could bridge that and actually reconcile these things with just a little more effort. So we brought him back into the room and we were like, hey, talk to the mom. Like, first of all, like stalking your daughter's periods is not the best way to do like sex ed. So you might want to actually have a conversation about that. And if you do, you may need to ask some pointed questions to determine whether pregnancy is a risk or not. Okay. Like, all right, are you picking up what we're putting
Ooh,
down?
I love the way you said that. That's so doctor like.
Thank you.
Come
Thank
on,
you.
yes,
Thank you.
doctor like.
Right?
Because
Because
pregnancy may
what
not even be a risk. Yes.
okay. And the other piece was I loved that by using knowledge and better vocabulary, I could encourage reconciliation between the two without betraying the trust of the real patient, who is that 14-year-old girl who had already decided not to share with her mother her sexual orientation. And it's not my job to tell her.
No.
Because
Yeah.
if you, as a parent who live with your child, do not know it, guess why you don't know it? Because the child you raise, who has spent every day with you, learning how you respond to things, has decided that they cannot tell you, either safely, securely, or confidently. And it is
Facts.
not my job to betray that, but I can facilitate health and good communication, you know?
Yeah.
And so all of those challenges, all of those opportunities, even just speaking with that girl about basketball and be like, girl, what position you play? No, again, I don't know nothing about it. You know, just all of that and really getting to know her to optimize her health and ultimately her future, that I was so pleased. Forgot about it once I got into residency because all you're trying to do is survive and not hurt people,
Oh
right?
yes. Right.
Intern year, when I tell you, I'm sitting here doggy paddling in the middle of the ocean. That's how it feels, right? For a whole year. It was my second
Yep.
year when I finally was like, I think I can touch the ground. I think I can stand up, right? I'm like, oh shoot, I got my bearings. I was like, I used to like something. There was an interest I had. Literally, this is exactly what happened. And luckily, in my program, we rotated through peds gynecology.
Nice.
Our second
Okay.
year, we had it present. I said, "Oh my gosh, I love it." After my first day, I sent a department-wide email. First of all, there was only 3 attendings. I said, "I just wanted to declare that I am going to apply to peds and adolescent gynecology. I love it. Please help me." And they did. It was wonderful.
I
But anyway,
love
that was
that.
such a long story, but that is my true origin story. Like,
I love that. No, I absolutely love that. And that's such a common story that
yes.
man, like I said, that the language you used was absolutely incredible because it's like, yeah, you might need to even find out if this is
Mhm.
actually a risk or not.
Exactly.
Without, and you're able to do that without disclosing. But at the same time, I see you, even as a medical student, being able to help and advocate for that
Yes. It's the
14-year-old patient.
advocacy.
And so I can see why all of those amazing things and those feelings kind of connected with you because you were just able to just really serve her.
Oh,
And hopefully things worked out well for her as well too, and she's able to continue to enjoy her basketball. And I'm sure, hopefully, I'm sure her periods became more regular so she could
right.
do her uniforms, but also balancing the desires and just the wants of people. It's just like
Right.
simply, it's just like I just want to know when it's going to be cool for me to wear a white uniform. That's it.
Right. That's sis
That's
had
all I care
no,
about.
that was all she was worried about. And that's the thing. If she was out here playing reindeer games and, worried about having, vaginal intercourse, she would have a few more reasons for wanting to plan out her period.
Right.
She said, it's the away bag. Do I pack my pads or not? Like, am I concerned or not? Do I need,
Right.
what is my
Right.
backup? That was it. I said,
Yeah.
wow.
So
Yeah.
simple. So simple
It's
yet so
simple.
transformative. So
Hmm.
tell me about Baylor's program in adolescent
Yeah.
psychologist, gynecology, excuse me.
Yeah. So, peds and adolescent gynecology is a fairly, I would say, new subspecialty in gynecology. That's the nature of pediatric subspecialties, truly,
Yeah.
where they realize one day these little hearts are a little different. Like, I think peds cardiology was the first pediatric subspecialty. You start to realize, hey, what they're dealing with needs to be managed differently than an adult, and da da da.
Hmm.
So, there are not that many programs, and I can't even tell you how many programs there are right now because I'd have to refresh myself. But I think there were like around like the lower teens, maybe like 14 when I
Okay.
applied. Baylor was the largest program with the highest amount of volume, and I
Hmm.
definitely knew I wanted to see as much volume as possible. It was also in Houston, which is a great
Okay.
city. Had a
Yes,
great
it is.
time there. And so it was just an exceptional place to train. I saw some of the rarest things, things that you only read about, and got trained in really, really good surgical procedure and, all of the things. We were able to have these collaborative clinics with different specialties like endocrinology and psychology and disorders of sexual development and gender identity and all these really interesting clinics where I got to really delve into what pediatric and adolescent gynecology is. And I was like, man, I learned so much, which is so shocking because the majority of adolescents are probably getting their care from people who never even had that experience,
True.
which
True.
is not bad, especially since care is so limited and, we were needing more healthcare providers. But I did learn a ton there. I was really grateful for that training.
That's really cool. And you said something that made me think about something else that's a little bit of a sidebar, but you said gender identity and things like that. Did you have any interactions, and this is just my own curiosity,
Mhm.
about like transgender
Mhm.
women, transgender men, women, the transgender space. So I'm trying to
Yes,
say
yes.
keep this as correct as possible. And dealing with kids that are wanting to transition or young girls that are wanting to transition. What was your experience like
Mhm.
in that field then?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of both. So in our clinic of disorders of sexual development, what we saw were folks who had like disorders in the sense of like ambiguous genitalia
Uh huh.
or abnormal chromosomes, right?
Okay.
Or something in the process of development that made it so that they didn't fall squarely into the binary as it
Mm-hmm.
relates to biological sex.
Yes.
So that's super interesting. Again, that can just be the genitalia, that can be the internal reproductive structures, that can be the chromosomes. So it's multiple levels. And I think
Okay.
people don't always realize how complex sex and gender are, which is why when you have an executive order that says we only have men and women, it's so stupid and
Yeah.
so limited and actually does not meaningfully impact reality. That's like saying, and it's easy for our brains to do that. It's like saying, hey, humans are people who walk around on two legs. Well, there's some people who may have amputations or be born without their leg. It doesn't mean they're not human, but in your limited, rigid definition, you decided that they don't exist, but they do. And
Right.
so it doesn't make them any less real. It just means that you are creating a world in which they are navigating it, pushing against extra friction and tension just
That they
because
don't
they
need to.
exist. And that's the
Yeah.
type of stuff that makes me mad. But anyway, so there's the disorders of sexual development, and then there's the fluidity of gender identity and gender expression. Gender
Mm-hmm.
identity is like I identify cognitively as this gender, which is the social construct of what a
Mm-hmm.
gender looks like, right? It has nothing to do with your genitalia. So we would see patients that come in and would maybe have a gender expression that looks more masculine, but
Mm-hmm.
their gender identity is I'm a girl, right?
Yeah.
And then we
Okay.
also had a patient who had XY chromosomes who looked gender expression looked like a young girl mostly because she was dressed and had her clothes purchased for her by her parents but had not gone through puberty and was thinking gender identity wise I just don't feel like a girl. So
Hmm.
that's someone that would be more non-binary. Do
Got
you
you.
see what I'm saying? And so
Yes.
it's there's so many levels. I think my favorite tool for understanding and discussing gender is something called the gender bread, and it literally looks like a gingerbread man, and it points out all of these little areas that says this is gender expression, this is gender identity, this is biological sex, and it shows how all of those things are different. This is sexual attraction, which is who I like, and all of those are distinctly different. And so,
Ah.
what we were dealing with primarily with our younger pediatric population was the matter of biological sex and what that looks like and what categories to put them in. And some people could not fit squarely in categories. And
Right.
then we had people that were expressing themselves with a different gender, which really didn't require any meaningful modification. And then gender identity, which is where you get into that gender dysphoria, where they're like, I identify as something different and my body doesn't feel right. I feel like I was born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
So I had a patient who would define themselves as a trans, I would say trans man or
Mm-hmm.
trans boy. That means my biological sex is female, but my gender identity is boy or man. I think they
Mm-hmm.
were like a teenager, and they were from a like Southeast Asian family, and that mom was just so
Hmm.
upset when the child said, actually, I don't feel like the girl that you believe me to be. I remember having a long conversation with that mom and just letting her know that you can't change who your child is and their discovery of who they are. But what we do know is if you do not offer support and if you are dead set on not supporting them during this time or creating a barrier or prohibiting them from exploring, expressing, that actually increases, suicidal ideation. It's really negatively affects their mental health. And one thing we can agree on is that you want your child to be happy and healthy and
Right.
alive. And so
Right.
once we reach that common ground, then you can determine how you move forward, how you grieve, what work you do, but you cannot project on your child a way that prevents them from being who they are
Yeah.
authentically. So anyway, it was one of the most eye-opening things, and it's why I will always advocate for policy and protocols that allow people to exist as their full authentic self. Because even with the highest trained professionals, we could not sometimes make determinations on the biological sex.
No.
We could not make determinations on recommended gender
Yeah.
because it was too confusing. It
Right.
was too many parts. It was too much to reconcile for the highest trained specialists.
That's incredible, and I see now why there is that specialty. See now why there's so many different intricate interweavings of, like you said, psychology with genetics,
Endocrinology.
with
Mm-hmm.
endocrinology, with, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
urology, with
Yep. Yep.
all
Peds
kinds of
surgery,
different
gynecology. Yeah.
peds surgery, all of the
Everybody.
things, because that's incredible. In the show notes, guys, I pulled up this genderbread person, and I feel like I'm a pretty open minded person, but this picture really does um, capitalize on what Dr. Charis is saying and really kind of just explain it really, really well. So I know this is the Docs Get Money podcast, but I will link in the show notes the genderbread person, because I think it's important for all of us as practicing physicians to have some deeper level of
Absolutely.
understanding, especially
Absolutely.
when um, DEI efforts are getting shut down. But we really don't understand the diversity of people, even
Mm-hmm.
as clinicians, because, like you said, you had to be all the way into a fellowship
Fellowship.
before you were really able to understand that. That is definitely not something that we teach. And I think the more we understand, even from a scientific biological basis, what we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with our patients, the better clinicians that we can be as well
Absolutely.
too. So thank you for bringing that up as a resource. I'm definitely going to drop that in the show notes for the watchers and the listeners. So I think I know the answer, but the next natural step is then we're awakening to the period, doctor. How did we
Right.
get there? Because now I can start to see the lack
Mhm.
of information, especially Black
Right.
people,
Come on,
knowing this and being
somebody.
able to talk about this
Yes.
in an educated and intelligent way, um, in a neutral way, not in a judgmental, not as in
Right.
God made you like this, or coming from it from that standpoint. But tell me why now, or why in 2019, before you finished your fellowship, that you decided to start the period doctor.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think you and I know this more than many other people, how long training feels, right? And even as a
Yes.
resident, when I was filling out my fellowship application, I was like, why am I doing this to me? I
Yes.
love me. Why would I treat me like this? But I knew I loved this subspecialty, so I knew I had to do it, but I was like, I can't believe I'm going to be adding 2 more years of training to this already long, you know, path. And just for people that may not know, obviously there's 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, 4 years of OB residency, and then another 2 years to that. Why am I doing it?
Yeah.
Because I love it. So anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm finishing my first year, and basically at this point, once you're done with your first year, you are being bombarded by the attendings like, where are you going? What's your job? What are you looking at? There's a job opening in St. Louis. There's one in Minnesota. You talk to them. Where are you gonna go? What's your next step? I'm just like, hold
Yeah.
up. How do I have been in this
Wait.
safe space. Nobody has ever asked me that book. The next step has already been planned for me. Next step has
Yeah.
always been the next year. Like I'm a PGY1, I'm gonna be a PGY2, I'm gonna be here, And so I
Exactly.
was not in that place before, and I was like a little panicked, like having a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
like a internal crisis. What do I want to do? And what I realized was, I don't want to be like none of y'all. Like
Mm-hmm.
the people at my program. And this had to do with
Yes.
me not loving the academic environment,
Yes.
navigating it out of necessity, but not wanting to be a part of it. Even just like oh,
At
I
all.
gotta do this many papers and I gotta do this much research and I got, what? It sounds
No.
like you're a never ending student. And I'm not, I don't have an issue with being a student of the craft, but I have an issue with like never ending metrics that make me feel like I'm in a bigger rat race than this rat race of life already is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I was like, hold up, I'm not about to do none of this. Every job you are recommending, I don't want. Now, having said that, we are at the peak of or around the time of the pandemic when I'm really
Mm-hmm.
getting into it. But around 2019, that summer, those job questions are coming up, and I don't know. And I'm having a little bit of like a crisis, and I'm praying for purpose, praying for purpose. And I was like, I feel like I have so much knowledge. And not to be
Mm-hmm.
like I'm so smart, but I've learned so much. And I
Yeah.
want to reach people now. I've seen the disparities are wild. The black patients that come in my office, all the patients that come in my office, they were just like, man, you really explained this well. You know, we've been scared about birth control for generations, and this one conversation made it make so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother never told me that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we've been saying we can't use tampons till you married with three children, for no reason, for you know the whole community. And so we're just dispelling myths, and it was a liberating practice.
Hmm.
I had also, you know, just wanted to just find something where I could just make a difference. So I said, you know what, it's go time. It's go time, and I felt that in my spirit. But the thing that really made me do it was an interaction with a pastor. Her name was Mia Wright, located in Houston, Texas. It was at a Spelman gala, and they were giving her an award for some work she was doing. She had like this women's conference, and I decided, hey, you know, we're gonna start putting ourselves out there. So I went up to her and said, if you ever have something with, you know, adolescent girls, I'm an adolescent gynecologist. I'd be happy to talk about health and periods and wellness, especially in the lens of Christianity, because I navigate these spaces.
Yes.
Intersectionality is real. From the South. I'm a black woman, Christian woman with very progressive views, right? And so I'm like, I can do this. And so I just kind of pitched myself for like unclear reasons. And she said, well, do you have a social media? I said, well, no. And she said, listen to this. I have a teen, my niece is about to go to college. I was trying to explain to her what a pap smear is, and I wanted to find a black doctor doing it, preferably a black woman. I couldn't find one. She's like,
Hmm.
there needs to be more black doctors on social media. You need to start that today. And she just looked
Hmm.
at me with this conviction. I'm like, did God send you? Like, how
Yeah.
did he? It was the
It sounds like
craziest.
it.
My mind had already said, I'm not satisfied. I need to make impact, real impact now. It made me so that I went up to her and said that. She said, make a social media. And I was like, oh, that is a good way. On that car ride home, I called my sister. I said, I think I'm going to call it the period doctor. I got on social media. I typed in, it wasn't taken. I got it. I like got the URL. I was like, theperiod.com. It wasn't taken. I was like, no one has thought about this. I mean, literally panicky, craziness. And I just said, I'm going to do it. And that's how it started. Sorry, that was very long.
No, that was spot on, and I don't think. Of course, we've talked about it. You
Yeah.
and I offline, but it's just like I didn't realize how divine that was.
God
Like just the time.
showed up.
It's God is so funny because it's just like I do remember. So what are you gonna do? So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna do
Right,
fellowship?
right.
Like everybody gets that at some point during your training, and it's just like
Yeah.
okay. And
I
I
know.
identified with exactly everything that you said. Like I decided not to do fellowship because of all of the reasons that you said. I'm like I cannot take this academia anymore.
Yeah.
I've been in school since I was 2 years old. I'm done.
Right.
Like
I'm done.
I'm officially done. I have all of the degrees in the world. But the timing of that is just like feeling that longing and not being connected with what is being presented to you. And
Yes.
then like I said, I think it was divine inspiration just to have you to go up and just to talk to this person and just say,
Yeah.
hey, just let me just talk to her and pitch myself. And for
Mhm.
her to like give you the next step. We always think that our lives are just going to unfold the way we just think it's going to unfold. Like, oh, I'm going to be
Right.
a doctor and I'm going to have all these kids. And we never always see the entire journey. The
Oh my
journey is always
gosh.
revealed to us like one step at a time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in the moments that you can't even really, you can never plan those moments. You had no
Never.
idea walking into that gala.
When I tell you, and the devil tried to stop me. I was on call. I had to change out of my scrubs into the bath in a bathroom to my little jumpsuit. It was just, I really was like, I might as well just not go. And it's
Right.
always the things that I'm so frustrated by, and I'm like, maybe I just won't go. Are it's like some of the best, most ordained meetings, events, situations, you know.
Yes.
But I almost didn't even go. I was just through, tired.
But you pushed through,
Mm-hmm.
and here you are. That's
Yes.
absolutely incredible. So talk to us about the journey. So you started the period doctor, you got the .com, and then what happened?
So and this is why I have you as a coach because I be getting ideas, but I don't always execute. But I was like, I need to hold myself accountable. I've got to do this. And so what I did was I scheduled a photo shoot because I felt like if I can get something legit together, to really show this pivot, to show that I'm really committed to this, I'm gonna do it. And of course, I found somebody, I don't know, through Instagram. My Neo did my makeup. I went to Dillard's to get dresses. We ain't do too
Yes.
much. And it was in the common area of my apartment. Did this photo shoot and I posted on my personal Instagram. Hey y'all, I'm about to start something. It is a labor of love. I'm launching it July 1st. And all my friends had asked me OBGYN advice forever. So I'm like, I'm going to be just giving a little bit of education and advocacy on this page because I've learned so much and I want to give back and I wanted to educate people. I had no idea there could be a monetary component at that time. I just thought it would be something that made me feel fulfilled. And so I'm like, please follow it. It's called The Period Doctor. And I've got this cute little photo shoot where I look in my white coat like real profesh. So that held me accountable. And I started recording videos. And don't you know, I didn't know what I was doing. Like literally hold my little phone up. I didn't really have a tripod. I ain't had no light. I thought if I stood near a window, it'd be fine. And when the
Yep.
videos were dark. Um, then I just started. And so really at that time social media wasn't so video focused. It was more like people would hold a little sign and be like, ovarian cysts, like that's where
Yes.
it was. So I had got one of them signs. I was messing with graphics. And so the majority of my posts were static posts with super long captions. And so I was studying for my oral boards at the time. And so as I studied different topics, I would just make them relatable in a way that I could explain them to other people. Actually, it was just a second way of studying because my best form of studying is absorbing the information and then explaining it to someone who doesn't have your training. That's how you know you really know it, right?
Yes.
And so that's always been my preferred practice of studying because it helps me to speak, it helps me to educate and counsel patients better, and it was oral board, so it made sense to be speaking it or
Yeah.
putting it in a way of layman's terms, right? Because oral boards, they were like, tell me how you would talk to that patient. And so that's how it was not wasted time. I was trying to be efficient, and I would type my post on the train ride to the medical center. If anyone knows Houston, there's a little light rail that goes from downtown to the med center. I took that. It was a 15-minute ride, and I would write my posts in the morning because I had time.
Right.
But I was committed to doing it. And so I started showing up, and it just started growing and started growing and started growing. Now, again, I'm praying. This is something given to me by God. I'm tithing. And so when people were asking me how it was growing, I was like, I don't really know, but it's all organic growth. So people are sharing posts, they're commenting, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you did this, DMing me. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And it was just kind of insane because, my little personal page got 200 followers or whatever. And so we're at 1,000. So I'm like, wow, 1,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I would never reach 1,000 people. What? And I was like, I could reach more people on Instagram than I could if I had full days of clinic for the rest of my life.
Right.
Wow, there's something to this. So yeah, that's how it started.
So it took off. Like you said, your personal page had 200 people, then you grew to 1,000. Then what was your next big milestone that you remember?
My next big milestone was getting hired to do work. That's when things really took a shift. So I remember getting an email, and I had set up on my page that I could be emailed. Like, so I was like, I'm gonna be real, I'm gonna make this official. And so I was dabbling with different features. And I got an email that was like, hey, I would like for you to come out to a podcast. We'll fly you to LA, we'll pay for your hotel and pay an honorarium. And here I go, I had to Google honorarium because that language wasn't even part of as a medical trainee honorarium. Absolutely not. So I said, I'm sorry, what do you mean? And so I had to Google what made sense. What do people get paid for this? And then I raised it a little bit because I said, well, I got some credentials behind my name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I made it $1,750.
Mm-hmm.
Just based off of like, my research, Google's.
Right.
And they said,
Vibes.
okay. I said, okay. What do you mean, okay? Because at that time, I could get paid $1,000 by doing a 12-hour moonlighting shift at the county hospital, running all of the beds, all of the floors, being the attendant for every patient that's laboring, and teaching residents for 12 hours. And
Mm-mm.
that was $1,000. And
Mm.
so I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to sit down on your little podcast for an hour, and you're going
And
to pay me more than I get paid to be stressed out for 12 hours where I leave the hospital praising God that nothing bad happened?
yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
remember I talked to the person that was hiring me. I said, I am so sorry. Because they had a series with other doctors. All those doctors were way more established than me. Like,
Okay.
here I am, new kid on the block. And I remember saying, why did you, how did you decide to pick me? Like, are you, like, what happened? Like, it seems like you deterred, you detoured from the established people. And they were like, oh, well, this episode, we're talking about periods, and you call yourself the period doctor. So it just made sense. I said, it sure did. Thank you. Like,
Oh yes, you're right. Yeah.
and that
Yes.
taught me the power of branding and the
Mm-hmm.
power of niching down and being intentional about how you show up. Because I chose the period doctor because I didn't want to be thrown into a pile with every other OBGYN in the
OBGYN.
world.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be talking about pregnancy and menopause and whatever else because I wanted to focus on folks with periods and
Mm-hmm.
adolescents because that is a meaningful population that is forgotten. And I wanted to show that I remembered this population. So I did it with every aspect of my being by naming myself the period doctor. I said, wow, this is crazy.
That makes so much sense. Let me pause because every time I hear you tell me this story, it's so impactful, and I glean so much from it as a business coach. And I want to pause and make sure that the audience listening gets this as well too. We as physicians may want to have a social media page, but I love the fact that you made content creation, you made what you were going to be doing and talking about just so relevant to your everyday life. You did not put out at first these high quality, highly produced,
Mm-mm.
perfectly scripted, gorgeously made up
Yeah.
videos. You started exactly where you are with just your passion, your
Mm-hmm.
purpose, and what you knew. And you just made it work from there, from even not even overthinking the
Right.
posts that you were made, even though those captions were long, you say. It's like you gave yourself 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
for by the time I get on this train and by the time I get off, we're gonna have this post and
Because
it's
I had
gonna
to
go
go.
up. And that's gonna but at the same time, though the fact that you allowed yourself not to know and
Mm-hmm.
still moved anyway. I think as physicians, we take on the academic mindset that we have to know
Right.
everything
Mm-hmm.
before we do something because we have spent 12, 10, 12, 15, however many years training to be this doctor, training to be this expert,
Absolutely.
but you allowed yourself to be brand new and just kind of just
Yeah.
like have and you
Trial
just
and
have
error.
fun with it and
Yeah.
had fun with it and didn't take yourself or take the process so seriously. You're like, no, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep going. And the fact that you just continue to have that energy that led you now to over 200,000 followers on social media and a personal brand, excuse me, a professional brand that pays you very well, because
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time you got paid. We've made
Right.
more than that, lots more money than you have in that space. But I just wanted to double tap on what you said is that, like I said, you just started where you were. You started with
Mm-hmm.
your purpose, you started with your passion, you started with what you knew, and you also had your person in mind as well
Mm-hmm.
too. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing, is that you knew exactly who needed to hear this because you were seeing them in the clinic every single day, or
Mm-hmm.
on your moonlighting shifts every day, or just like your friends, your family, people that were just asking you general questions. You knew exactly who you were talking to, and that was enough for you.
Yeah.
um And I just want to just like I said, double tap on this, the remarkability of that. I think it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there in that way, and not to be this perfect in the box
Right.
doctor so and so. Like, yes, you took the doctor pose pictures, of
Right.
course, but
Hmm.
at the same time, just allowing yourself to just be, and just to share and just be a vessel of education.
Yeah.
I think that's tremendous.
Thank you. But it was also protective because if I copied and pasted the rules and stress from my regular life to this space that I needed for purpose and fulfillment and joy, it would ruin it. It would have
Hmm.
ruined it before it started. And so I really needed it to just be a place where I could give people education and let them know some stuff that would potentially improve their knowledge and how they care about themselves and move on and get some good feedback and be like, I'm glad you like that. More tomorrow, more the next day, whatever, but not
Yeah.
without crazy obligation and not with
Right.
emergencies and pagers and sleepless nights. It didn't need to be that, and I couldn't make it that. And I wouldn't do that to myself. Like, that was like something that I set up. I'm not doing this to myself. I am not creating an extension of the life that drains me. I need to fill my cup.
Come on, somebody. Now that'll preach as well too, because I think that's the other thing, is that when we start to put monetization on
Hmm.
things, and when we start to step outside of medicine and start our own businesses, or start our own professional brands, or do anything that is outside of the stereotypical box, we tend to want to implement the same
Yes,
oppressive systems that we have come out
right,
of.
because that's what we know.
But I'm so glad again that you were courageous and aware enough to release yourself from that before you even got started. It's like, if I'm going to keep doing this, you put boundaries on yourself. Like, this is not going to be something that I'm going to stress myself out about every day. I'm going to have fun with it. This is going to be
Exactly.
just a natural extension of who I am and what I want and what I
Hmm.
do. And so it's very, and I see that as well too. It's just like the hustle of it all. I mean, I
Hmm.
fell into it. Like, of course, starting other, you just think that you have to be a hustler and you have to just go get it, go
Right,
get it, go get it. And
right.
it's just like, okay, no one's dying, Kim. Like, no one's in the
Right. Hello,
ICU.
this is actually not life and death. I know
This
you
is
know that,
not
but
life
this
and
is
death.
not that.
This is not life and death.
Yes.
And I think walking into any business opportunity, which of course this is not did not start like that, but it ended up being. I'm just saying for our listeners, any business opportunity that you have, it should not feel like an obligation. It should feel like a natural extension of your purpose. It should feel like you are divinely led and
Yes.
not necessarily oppressed by it. If it starts
Right.
feeling oppressed and oppressive, then maybe you should consider letting it go. But you should always do something that is naturally giving and supporting to other people and to
Yes.
yourself as well too, because that's what pay you have to pay yourself first, otherwise you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
going to keep going. So you're not going to keep going.
Absolutely.
Okay, well then tell me how you started getting into coaching. Speaking of all of that,
Yeah.
because you grew this brand, you grew this page, and then what started happening? Because I know people were paying attention to you. So,
Yeah. So I think I started to realize that my page and my post resonated with people differently than other people that were similar or had similar credentials, expertise, or desires.
mhm.
And so people were like, huh, I really, or people, my followers and people messaging me were like, I really like the way you said that. I like your page because you do this. And so I said, oh, okay. That's really interesting. And then we would go, as I started to be able to be invited to speak at different places, I started to meet other folks in the space of medicine and in the field of medicine who were like, no, but really, how? And I was like, oh, you know, I just do this. And it seemed simple because I'd done so much trial and error and just building on my own. And the other piece that I'll be candid about is like, there was no team. This is me and my phone, okay? Me, my phone, and some apps. And so everything as I learned it, I learned as I went. And so people were like, can you put me in touch with the person that does your social media? I'm like, girl, it is me. I'm her. She is she. Like, what do you mean? And so I was getting all these questions and things that I didn't have a response to because I wasn't aware that it was so odd or different from what was out there. I didn't realize people were paying folks to do their social media. I didn't realize they weren't writing their own stuff. I didn't realize they weren't editing it. I didn't realize any of that. So people started asking me, how are you doing this? I actually want to grow something similar. Like, I want to learn from you. I want you to mentor me. And so I had to step back and be like, what am I doing? What did I do? And I used to just really, downplay it. Like, oh, I tithe. People were just nice, favor ain't fair,
Right.
all those things.
Right.
But I had to admit that I had been very strategic. I
Mm-hmm.
had been learning along the way. I had gotten not just better, but like really good at
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing. And if I spent some time, I could show people how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, all right, I'm already busy enough. When I met you, I was good and pregnant. Well, second trimester pregnant. But I felt just, and again, it's just these little nudgings of the spirit where it's like, it's time. You can do
Yeah.
this. Stop making excuses. Do it. And so when I saw you at NMA and you were doing your talk, I actually saw like a poster for it. I was like, gotta go to
Mm-hmm.
this talk. Made my little way down there. I was like, oh shoot, I actually need her help because I had decided I can do this coaching. It makes sense. While God has been good, He has given me tangible tools that
Yeah.
I can show other people. But I needed someone like you to show me like what does building a business look like. So I had
Mm-hmm.
built my social media business with me as the business, but doing business with your customer and reaching out to them and navigating sales, which made my skin crawl. The idea of talking to someone, and I told you that. I was like, I hate that. I hate that. I love working with companies where I'm like, you're not even the one writing a check. This ain't your money. There was a
Right.
dissonation
Exactly.
from the money and the I don't know, the emotion of it. It felt like
Mm-hmm.
I could be a little emotionless and more removed, but I knew in this space I actually had to lean into those emotions and
Mm-hmm.
then use them as tools and guides and even motivation to make a sale that wasn't a predatory sale. It was one that was meeting a goal for my customer and for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And seeing the mutual benefit of what I was offering allowed me to move forward and create the business and to do so with integrity and to kind of get rid of those fears and that kind of ickiness that I felt around sales because I'd never done it before. I
Right.
genuinely had just never ever done anything quite like that before. And I'd been new. It was cute navigating social media, figuring it out over 5 years. I didn't have 5 years. Okay, I need to do this. I need to get this money by
Before this
tomorrow.
baby comes out.
Yeah. So I needed, coaching. I needed to do this quickly and efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that you had the tools. I listened to your talk. I was like, she has the tools. These are the tools. I was writing down tools. So yeah, that's how we ended up with the coaching.
So that's amazing. So tell us just briefly a little bit about what you do now as a coach
Mhm.
yourself, and tell me about the success that you had when you actually opened the doors for your
Yeah.
coaching business as well too.
So my coaching business, as you alluded to, I named it Reclamation RX.
Hmm.
A prescribed approach for professionals to reclaim their professional identity in the social media space, to translate the influence, as you mentioned, that they have in real life to this social media and online space so that they do feel more fulfilled and more purposeful and more authentic and can open the door to monetization and opportunities outside of the clinical spaces or outside of their traditional workspaces. And that's what I did for myself. That's what people were asking me to help them do. And so it just
Hmm.
made sense. So we decided on a date to launch. I was like, we got to get this done. I got a baby
Hmm.
cooking. This baby is ready to go. So we decided on a launch date. It was September 23rd, I believe. You may, I did a
Not,
lot.
I mean, you must say, you made me.
We decided to do something to launch it, and I was like, well, I never do lives because I hate them. And you're like, you should lean into that, and I did, and it was very good. It was very impactful, and a lot of people signed up because of that. And with your help, I made a form and got over 50 people to sign up. As soon as we opened it up for people to be able to show interest, it was more interest than I ever thought. I think I had about 30 something, almost 3 dozen intro calls or total calls, and then quickly filled my cohort. My goal was to have 10 clients. I had 9 before I left for maternity leave, and that yielded $63,000. My goal, I was like, man, if I could make $50,000 in a year, that'd be great. But that was just
That's still the
within,
gag that gets
6 months.
me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it
That still
has, yeah,
tickles me.
yeah. Hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, girl, you can make that in a year for sure. But it's just like to exceed that on your
Hmm.
very first cart open or door open or however
Yeah,
you want to phrase that. How
I
did that really feel for you, Shars?
so it's funny because, you know, it was over time. I remember the first client I got, because it doesn't feel real until that first client, right?
Hmm.
You're still in a space of an idea. You know what you have to offer, but it feels like once someone has bought in, it legitimizes it a little bit. That's how it felt for me. So I remember the first time I got that notification that someone had bought the package. I said, "Oh my God. I know that there's value in what I do, but someone else knows too, and now I get
Yeah.
to do it." And then another one. And I would just call my husband like, I got another one, another person sign up. I have another client. I'm another coach. And so it was really like, okay, okay. Like it was like, like one of
Right.
those things where over time you're just like,
Like, is this really happening? Like the
yes,
office,
that's
like you
how.
want to look at the camera, like,
Yeah, you feel like, is this real? Is this real? Yeah, I think it's real. It's real, and that it was a slower realization. And it just felt amazing. I was, honestly, I was so proud of myself because to get to this, I had to navigate so much discomfort. And discomfort that I had previously just kind of chalked up as kind of a part of who I am. Like,
hmm,
I'm not a salesperson.
yeah,
Because I'm an introvert, I ain't going to just invite unnecessary conversation with strangers. Like that. There were things that just felt like they were directly opposite of who I had decided I was.
hmm,
And so I was able to, it was uncomfortable, stretch myself because I can do anything when I have it connected to a true goal. And when I have reconciled that that goal authentically supports who I am. So it
yeah,
wasn't like I had to depart from who I am. It was finding and navigating other ways to do things to
hmm.
further myself and the goals that I had for me. Yeah, it was a wild ride.
I'm just laughing because, yeah, I remember your husband asking you, and then you told me, like, what are y'all doing on these calls up there? Like, y'all just up there
What
building
y'all
the
doing?
business. I said, that's exactly what we're doing. We
Right.
are building a business.
Precisely. Building a whole business.
And you slid in and told me, like, oh, I have this many people now. I'm like, girl, what? Like, what is happening? Why are you not telling me
I
this is
know, because I
happening?
could barely believe it myself. I mean, it literally, and it happened so quickly. It really did happen so quickly. Like every other, like next day, 2 people in a day, type of thing.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really just a mind-blowing type of thing, quite honestly. But it was beautiful.
Um, well, that's incredible, Charis. And just tell us a little bit about what some of your clients have been able to do, the other healthcare professionals that you've been working with, and how their brands are going right now.
Oh gosh. So a lot of people were starting from scratch, really just deciding on and just as simple as a name,
Hmm.
a direction in which they wanted to go. And so it has been absolutely beautiful to see folks really just lean into the brands that they're building and start to create videos that reach people. And even having clients that say, well, I thought I wanted to do these types of videos and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to
Okay.
pivot, and saying, okay, let's walk through what that looks like.
Hmm.
Seeing them capitalize on different like awareness months and weeks and really being able to like coach themselves through
Hmm.
different opportunities, seeing them book for speaking engagements and
Yes.
in-person events and panels and all of these things that happen because they bet on themselves, because they invested in themselves, because they put themselves out there. And I love being able to witness the realization that I had, like this is real. This
Yeah.
can work.
Yeah.
I am capable of so much more. And
Yeah.
I think the thing that has made me most excited and most fulfilled in this process is watching people become aware of possibility and the fullness of what possibility looks like outside of the limitations they previously had placed on themselves and on their lives. It is I don't think I'll ever get tired of that, of seeing
Yeah.
that happen. And so, yeah, they're growing. They're stretching themselves. They're getting comfortable with editing, getting crazy great opportunities, getting offered paid partnerships, things that are possible, but just to see it happen for them, is just beautiful.
And I think that's just one of the beauties of being a coach, to encourage people to kind of walk through that for themselves and helping them with a proven process so that they
Yes,
can get those results quicker. Because I mean, they could do it on their own, but they would struggle for years potentially before
truly.
they would get the things. And to be able to give them an opportunity to do that a lot faster at an accelerated rate and get those results is incredible. And I just want to say a testament to you. Like, you took my process, you took Ignite, and you ran with it. You're like, nope, this is the date, this is the time, this is what we're doing. And I'm what you just said with your clients. That's how I feel honestly about you. Is that I gave you a process of this is the 5 simple things that you need to do, and it's going to be uncomfortable. I didn't say it was
Yeah.
easy. I said it was simple what you needed to do, but still watching you move past discomfort and achieving this result. And I think the money that you were able to generate with your first launch it's a byproduct of that. But to know that you
Yes.
are able now to be able to answer people when you say, hey, can you help me? Absolutely, I can. Like, you actually have a process, you have a system.
Yes.
Just here, let's have a conversation, let's have a call, let me see how I can help you. And have you to grow something meaningful from what people have been asking you to help them to do for years, absolutely years. And you were
Yeah.
saying, well, now is the time before this baby comes out, I'm going to do it, this is the time. Okay, I believe you,
Yeah.
let's go. So that's absolutely incredible. And I love to see, I follow some of your clients, they don't know that I follow them, but I'm just watching you guys blossom and
I
just
love
grow into
it.
the social media space.
Yes.
It's so amazing. So congratulations to everybody involved in Reclamation RX, including your clients as well too, because like I said, your success is translated to them, and their success is your success as well too. So before we go, I know you have so many other things you hinted at in your bio that you
Yeah.
are thinking about getting into authorship. So what's next on the horizon for you as far as Reclamation RX and any other projects that you've got going on?
Yeah, so I'm most excited right now about my book. I'm writing a book for parents. As I alluded to, parents want to support their kids, their menstruators, during these years, and a lot of people just don't have the resources. And so, what I'm writing is a medically accurate book that considers the intersectionality of being a black parent, a parent that has certain religious views, and how you can teach your kid your personal values, but also teach them that they are valued. And you can do so with tools of medical accuracy. You can have your anatomy in front of you, things that maybe you weren't even taught, and even reconcile some of the things you experienced so that you can raise a really empowered kid and not necessarily, well, actually, break some of the generational misconceptions and harms that we've perpetuated for a
Yeah.
while in our community. So that book is called The Puberty and Period Parenting Revolution. That's the tentative title. But I'll, once the real title's out there and the book, the cover, everything, I will definitely pop that out. It's going to be coming out March of 2026. And so what I've got is an opportunity for folks to sign up for my email list to get, personalized updates and kind of before everyone else updates and insights on what's happening with the book and where they can find it, how they can pre-order and all of those things. I'm just beyond excited. It was difficult writing a book while pregnant and with a newborn and all those things. But yeah, such is life. And it's beautiful to see that come to life. So I'm just very excited.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely have the link to that in the show notes for anyone that wants to pre-order. I need to go ahead and pre-order. There's a long ways away before this child goes through any type of puberty, but I'm going to plan on reading it because I need to be as
Yes.
prepared as I can, even though I'm a woman, and all of those things
Yes.
as well too. So I cannot wait to read the book. I can't wait to see it. And when it launches, I know it's just going to be absolutely incredible. I'm claiming New York Times
Oh,
bestseller.
yes. I
Yeah,
received that
I'm
from your
feeling
lips
that.
to God's ears. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I'm feeling that for sure.
yes.
Anything else you want to share with the Docs Get Money audience? As a matter of fact, yes, one last question, please.
Mhm.
There's a doctor out there that's listening to you right now that is either wanting to start their own brand on social media or they're wanting to start their own business. What is the best advice that you would say to them in order to encourage them to take that step and to bet on themselves?
Yeah, I think we have such limiting beliefs in our life, and I think you helped me to kind of realize some of the ones that I even carry as someone that I think is very ambitious. And I would invite them to fully explore what it would look like if it all went well, what that would look like if God just blew your mind. And to really lean into that. As someone who struggles with anxiety, I have a really automatic process of my brain that can create and manufacture worst case scenarios without me even asking, right? But with effort, we can also use our imagination in a better way to see what it would look like if it just went beautifully. And that is what I want to invite and encourage people to do. Spend just a little bit of time thinking about what if it works out? What if I reach the people I intend to reach? What if this makes me better? What if I can do this? What does that look like? And then once you do it, weigh the risk and the benefits. You know, if I don't do it, well, it didn't work out, and that's okay. Let's get off my back. But if I do, wow, my future will be different. My life will be different. My children's life will be different. I'll build generational wealth. My marriage will be better. I'll have greater flexibility. I'll have more balance. My health may improve. I'll be able to work out in the mornings. I'll have control over my schedule. My autonomy will be mine. You know, those sorts of things. If that is on the other side of possibility, lean into it because that is what my life is a testament to. Leaning into things and God blowing my mind. And I want everyone to experience that. I genuinely do. That's my bias. I want that for everyone.
That is some of the best advice I've ever heard. So thank you for that. That is absolutely incredible. Dr. Charis Chambers, OBGYN extraordinaire, social media coach extraordinaire, entrepreneur extraordinaire. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
blessing the Docs Get Money podcast with your story, with your time. I'm so blessed that you're here. So thank you so much again. I really appreciate your interview.
Thank you for having me. This was a joy, as it always
All right.
is.
Not a problem. Everybody else that's listening, check the show notes. We'll have all the links for you to catch up with Dr. Charis Chambers on social media. Of course, she's at the Period Doctor if you just want to head over to Instagram and follow her right now. But until the next episode, I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Docs Get Money podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you find your favorite podcast. Share, comment, follow, and subscribe to the Docs Get Money podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more, visit me, Dr. Kimberly Brown, at KimberlyBrownMD.com, and be sure to follow me at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram. And until next time, let's go get this money, honey.